Good evening, dear listeners. Tonight, we have something different for you. Not a collection of tales, but one long, unfolding story that will carry you through the next 2 hours. This is a story about something that frightens us more than ghosts or monsters. The realization that the person living next door, the one you wave to every morning, might be hiding something terrible. This is the story of Sarah Mitchell, a single mother who moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood seeking safety and a fresh start, only to discover that some dangers don't lurk in dark alleys or abandoned buildings. Sometimes evil lives in the house next door, smiling at you over the fence, offering to help with your groceries, slowly weaving itself into your life until escape seems impossible. What makes this story particularly unsettling is how ordinary it begins. There are no supernatural warnings, no ancient curses, no mysterious legends, just a woman, her daughter, and a neighbor who seems almost too helpful, too interested, too present in their lives. So settle in comfortably, close your eyes, and let me tell you about the year Sarah Mitchell lived at 1247 Maple Street, and about the man who lived at 1249, the neighbor who would turn her dream of a safe, quiet life into a waking nightmare. Part 1. The New Beginning. Sarah Mitchell had been dreaming of this moment for 3 years. As she turned her Honda CR-V onto Maple Street for the first time as a resident rather than a visitor, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders that had been pressing down since her divorce from David. The houses on Maple Street were exactly what she'd been searching for. Modest but well-maintained, set back from the street with mature trees providing shade and privacy. These were starter homes built in the 1970s, the kind of place where young families put down roots and elderly couples retired peacefully. It was boring, safe, and utterly perfect. Number 1247 was a 3-bedroom ranch with cream-colored siding and dark green shutters. The previous owners had maintained it beautifully, and the inspection had revealed no significant issues. More importantly, it was within Sarah's budget. Barely, but she'd made it work. The mortgage payment would be tight, but she'd been living tight for 3 years. What was a few more years of careful budgeting compared to finally having a home of her own, a place where her 8-year-old daughter Emma could have her own room and a backyard to play in? "Is this it, Mom? Is this really our house?" Emma's voice piped up from the back seat, full of the excitement that only an 8-year-old could muster at 7 in the morning. "This is really it, sweetheart," Sarah confirmed, pulling into the driveway and killing the engine. "This is home." The word felt strange in her mouth. For 3 years, home had been a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a less-than-ideal neighborhood. Before that, it had been the house she'd shared with David, but that had never really felt like home, more like a battlefield with carpeting and appliances. As they sat in the car, taking in their new home, Sarah noticed movement at the house next door, number 1249. A man emerged from the side door carrying a trash bag. He was probably in his early 40s, with dark hair graying at the temples, wearing khaki pants and a polo shirt, despite it being Saturday morning. He had an average build, average height, and the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. He noticed our car and raised a hand in greeting, his face breaking into a friendly smile.
Sarah waved back reflexively, already mentally preparing herself for the awkward neighbor introduction that was inevitable when you moved to a new place. "Come on, Em. Let's go check out the inside before the moving truck gets here." The house smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. The previous owners had updated a few things before selling. Sarah walked through the rooms with Emma bouncing beside her, already planning where furniture would go, which room would be Emma's, where she'd set up her home office for the medical billing work she did remotely. The backyard was bigger than she'd remembered from the showing. A decent-sized rectangle of grass enclosed by a wooden privacy fence that needed a coat of stain but was structurally sound. There was even an old swing set left behind by the previous owners, something Emma had already discovered and claimed with the universal authority of childhood.
Mom, look! Can I swing, please? Go ahead, baby. Just be careful until I can check and make sure it's sturdy. Sarah stood on the small back deck, watching Emma pump her legs on the swing, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt something close to peace. They'd made it. Despite everything, the divorce, the financial struggles, David's vindictive legal maneuvering, they had made it to something better. Beautiful morning for a move. Sarah startled, turning to find the neighbor from next door standing at the fence line. Up close, she could see he was probably closer to 50 than 40, with the kind of nondescript features that would be easy to forget. Pleasant face, neither handsome nor ugly, with brown eyes that held a friendly warmth. "Oh, yes, it is," Sarah replied, walking over to the fence. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. We're just moving in today." Robert Chen, he extended his hand over the fence. His grip was firm but not aggressive, his palms slightly cool despite the morning warmth. "Welcome to the neighborhood. How old's your daughter?" 8. That's Emma. Sarah gestured toward the swing set where Emma had noticed the stranger and had slowed her swinging, watching him with the cautious curiosity of a child who'd been taught about stranger danger. "Beautiful age," Robert said, his smile never wavering. "I remember when my daughter was 8. Seems like yesterday. She's 24 now, lives in Seattle. I don't see her as much as I'd like." "I'm sorry," Sarah said automatically, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. "Part of life," Robert shrugged philosophically. "Kids grow up, move away. That's what we raise them to do, right? Be independent." He paused, then continued. "Listen, I know moving day is crazy, so I won't keep you. But if you need anything, if you need to borrow tools, need help with something heavy, or just need to know where the good grocery store is, I'm usually home. I work from home, computer programming, so I'm around most days." "That's very kind of you," Sarah said, meaning it. She'd been dreading moving day, knowing it would just be her and the moving crew, no friends or family nearby to help. "No problem at all. That's what neighbors are for." Robert gave a final wave and headed back toward his house, leaving Sarah with a warm feeling. Maybe this neighborhood would be as friendly as she had hoped. The moving truck arrived at 9, and for the next 6 hours, Sarah directed traffic as her furniture and boxes were hauled into the house. Emma alternated between helping, by which she meant moving small, unbreakable items, and playing in the backyard. By 3 in the afternoon, Sarah was exhausted, sweaty, and surrounded by more boxes than seemed physically possible. She was in the kitchen, trying to figure out which box contained her coffee maker, Essential, when there was a knock at the front door.
She opened it to find Robert Chen standing there holding a large covered dish. "Lasagna," he said simply. "Figured you probably haven't had time to think about dinner and ordering pizza gets old. It's vegetarian, but I can run home and grab the meat one if that's a problem." Sarah felt unexpected tears prick at her eyes. It had been so long since someone had done something thoughtful without wanting something in return. That's incredibly kind. Thank you. Vegetarian is perfect. There's garlic bread, too, and some salad in this bag," he said, holding up a reusable grocery bag she hadn't noticed. And before you worry, I'm not some creepy guy trying to use food as an excuse to intrude. I'll just hand this over and get out of your hair." Sarah laughed, taking the dish and bag. "I really appreciate this. Seriously. Thank you." "Enjoy. And again, if you need anything, I'm next door." With another of his pleasant, forgettable smiles, Robert turned and walked back to his own house. That evening, as Sarah and Emma ate the lasagna, which was delicious, unpacked a few essential boxes, and set up Emma's room so she'd have a comfortable place to sleep, Sarah felt grateful for their good fortune. A nice house, a friendly neighbor, a fresh start in a safe neighborhood. She had no way of knowing that Robert Chen had been waiting for someone exactly like her to move in next door. She had no way of knowing that the previous owners had moved out suddenly, breaking their lease 6 months early, and that they'd refused to explain why. She had no way of knowing that the house before that had also turned over quickly, and the one before that. She had no way of knowing that Robert Chen had been perfecting his approach for years, getting better at it with each new neighbor, learning from his mistakes, becoming more subtle, more patient, more dangerous. All she knew was that the lasagna was good, her daughter was happy, and for the first time in years, she felt like maybe everything would be okay. She was wrong.
Part 2. Small Kindnesses. The first week in the new house passed in a blur of unpacking, organizing, and establishing new routines. Emma started at her new school, Riverside Elementary, just 6 blocks away on Wednesday, and Sarah threw herself into setting up her home office and catching up on the medical billing work that had piled up during the move. Robert Chen proved to be a model neighbor, not intrusive, but helpful in the small ways that make life easier. On Thursday morning, Sarah's car wouldn't start, and she was panicking about getting Emma to school when Robert appeared in her driveway. "Battery's dead," he diagnosed after looking under the hood. "I've got jumper cables. Give me 2 minutes." He had them running in 5, refusing Sarah's offer of coffee as payment. "Glad I could help. You might want to get that battery checked, though. Looks pretty corroded." On Friday, the garbage truck came when Sarah was in a work meeting, and she forgot to put out the bins. When her meeting ended, and she remembered, with a curse, she looked out to see Robert wheeling her garbage and recycling bins to the curb along with his own. Small things, neighborly things, the kind of things that good neighbors do. The weekend brought more interactions. Emma had kicked her soccer ball over the fence into Robert's yard, a fence that was actually Sarah's responsibility, Robert explained, as it was on her property line. He'd returned it with a smile and suggested that maybe Sarah should think about getting one of those ball return nets. He'd seen them at the sporting goods store. On Thursday afternoon, Sarah was struggling to hang curtains in the living room when Robert happened to be outside and noticed through the window. "Need a hand? I've got a ladder that's taller than yours." She accepted, grateful for the help, and they chatted casually while he held the ladder steady. He asked safe, appropriate questions. How was Emma adjusting to her new school? Had Sarah found a good pediatrician yet? Did she know about the neighborhood watch meetings? "We take safety pretty seriously around here. Not that we've had any real problems, but better safe than sorry, right? Especially with kids in the neighborhood." "Absolutely," Sarah agreed, appreciating the community-mindedness.
It was during the second week that the dynamic began to shift so subtly that Sarah didn't notice at first. Robert started appearing at times that seemed coincidental, but were actually carefully calculated. He'd be getting his mail when Sarah went to get hers. He'd be working in his yard when she took Emma to the bus stop. He'd be returning from a jog just as she was leaving for her morning coffee run. Great minds think alike, he'd joke about the timing, and Sarah would laugh, thinking nothing of it. Emma, with the friendly openness of an 8-year-old who'd been taught to be polite to adults, started waving to Mr. Chen every time she saw him. Robert always waved back, sometimes calling out a cheerful "How was school?" or "Enjoy your weekend."
It was all so normal, so neighborly, so perfectly calibrated to seem helpful without being pushy. The first tiny crack in the perfect facade appeared on a Tuesday evening. Sarah had ordered pizza, and the delivery driver got lost. She was standing in her front yard, phone to her ear, trying to guide the driver when she noticed Robert standing in his own yard, watching her. Not doing anything else, not getting his mail, not working on his landscaping, just standing there, watching. When their eyes met, he smiled and waved, and Sarah waved back automatically. But something about it felt off. How long had he been standing there? Why hadn't he said hello like he usually did? She dismissed the thought. Maybe he just stepped outside. Maybe he was checking his sprinklers or something. She was probably being paranoid. The pizza arrived, she went inside, and she forgot about the incident. Until 2 days later, when it happened again. Sarah was loading groceries into her car in the driveway when she felt eyes on her. She turned to see Robert standing at his living room window looking out at her. Again, when he noticed she'd seen him, he smiled and waved before moving away from the window. "Weird," Sarah muttered, but then Emma called out asking if she could have a snack, and the moment passed. It was around this time that Robert started mentioning things that he shouldn't have known. Little things, easy to explain away, but they accumulated. "How'd Emma's math test go?" he asked one morning at the mailbox. Sarah paused, confused. "How did you know she had a math test?" "Oh, I heard you talking to her about it yesterday when you were in the backyard. Sound really carries over that fence," he explained easily. "Sorry, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop." It made sense. Sound did carry. Sarah made a mental note to be more aware of that. A few days later, he asked how her mother was feeling. "I saw you on the phone yesterday looking worried," he explained before she could ask. "Figured it might be family stuff." Again, reasonable. The phone call had been in her office, but the window faced his house. He might have glanced over and seen her expression. But then there was the package.
Sarah had ordered Emma a birthday present online. A fancy art set that Emma had been begging for. It was supposed to arrive on a Thursday, but Sarah ended up having to work late on a telehealth certification call that ran over. When she finally got home at 6, she found the package sitting on her front porch. She brought it inside, planning to hide it in her closet, when she noticed something that made her pause. The package had been opened. Not obviously, the tape had been carefully slit and then resealed, but Sarah could tell. The seal wasn't quite right, and there was a small tear in the corner where someone had been hasty. Her first thought was that it had been damaged in shipping. It happened. But then she remembered that it had been sitting on her porch all day. Her porch that was visible from Robert's living room window. No, she was being paranoid. Why would her neighbor open her package? It made no sense. But the thought lodged itself in her mind and wouldn't leave. That weekend, Sarah decided to do some yard work. The flower beds needed weeding, and the grass needed mowing. Emma was inside watching cartoons, and Sarah was on her hands and knees in the front flower bed when she heard Robert's voice behind her. "Those hostas are looking a little yellow. Could be too much sun. I've got some plant food that might help." Sarah jumped, not having heard him approach. "Oh, hi. Yeah, I noticed that. I'm not much of a gardener, I'm afraid." "Well, if you want, I could take a look at your yard, give you some suggestions. No charge, of course," Robert offered. "I used to do landscaping before I got into programming. I miss it sometimes." "That's nice of you to offer," Sarah said, standing up and brushing dirt from her knees. "Let me think about it. I'm still just trying to get unpacked and organized." Of course. No rush. The offer stands whenever you're ready." Robert smiled, but Sarah noticed that his eyes lingered on her moment longer than felt comfortable. "By the way, I've been meaning to mention, your bedroom window doesn't lock properly. I noticed the other day that it was sitting ajar, and with the weather getting warmer, you'll want to get that fixed. Security issue, you know."
Sarah froze. My bedroom window? Yeah, the one on the side, facing my house. I wasn't being nosy, he added quickly. I was trimming my hedges, and happened to notice it wasn't sitting right in the frame. Old houses, you know, things settle. Probably just needs some adjustment. Right, Sarah said slowly. Thanks for letting me know. After Robert went back to his house, Sarah went inside and straight to her bedroom. She looked at the window. It did look slightly crooked in the frame, but how had Robert noticed that level of detail from his yard? How closely had he been looking at her house? She tried to open the window and found that it did stick. The latch worked fine, but the window itself didn't want to open smoothly. How long had it been like this? Had it always been this way? And more importantly, why did Robert know about it when she, living in the house, hadn't noticed it? That night, lying in bed, Sarah found herself staring at the window in question. It faced Robert's house. She'd hung curtains, but they were sheer. They let light in while providing some privacy during the day. But at night, with her lights on and his house dark, anyone over there could see in easily. Had Robert been watching her? Was that how he knew the window didn't close right? No, she told herself firmly. She was being paranoid. He'd explained how he noticed. He was being helpful, not creepy. But she got up and pushed her dresser in front of the window anyway, just in case.
Part 3. The Escalation. 3 weeks into living at 1247 Maple Street, Sarah started keeping a mental list of things that bothered her about Robert Chen. She didn't write them down. That seemed crazy, making a list about your neighbor like he was some kind of threat. But she couldn't help cataloging them in her mind. The way he always seemed to know her schedule,
Not just when she left for grocery shopping or took Emma to school, but when she had important work calls. He'd mentioned once that she seemed stressed when he saw her in the yard after what looked like a tough meeting. When she paid bills, he'd mentioned that she should really check if she could get better rates on her utilities. I happened to see the ComEd truck here the other day. Even when she had her period, he'd commented that she must not be feeling well. She seemed tired. Did she need anything from the store? The way he'd inserted himself into her routines. He'd started jogging at the exact time she walked Emma to the bus stop. He'd started getting his mail at the exact time she got home from the grocery store. He'd started working in his yard whenever she was in hers. The way he talked about Emma, always appropriate, nothing overtly wrong, but there was something about the interest that felt disproportionate. He'd remembered details about Emma's life that Sarah had mentioned in passing. The names of her friends, her favorite subjects, the fact that she wanted to try out for the school play. Emma mentioned she's nervous about the auditions, he said one morning. I told her she'd do great. Sarah's blood had run cold. When did you talk to Emma? Oh, yesterday afternoon. She was in the backyard, and I was on my deck. We chatted through the fence. Hope that's okay. He looked concerned. I didn't mean to overstep. No, it's fine, Sarah had said, but it wasn't fine. She needed to talk to Emma about not having conversations with Robert without Sarah present. When she'd tried to bring it up with Emma that evening, her daughter had looked confused. But Mom, you said Mr. Chen was nice. He's our neighbor. Isn't that what neighbors do? Talk to each other? Yes, honey, but I want to know when you're talking to adults, okay? Even nice adults, even neighbors. Emma had rolled her eyes with the dramatic exasperation of an 8-year-old being asked to do something she considered unnecessary, but she'd agreed. The problem was that Sarah couldn't articulate what was wrong. Robert hadn't done anything inappropriate. He hadn't said anything creepy. He was helpful, friendly, and respectful. If she tried to explain her concerns to anyone else, she'd sound paranoid. The change in how she felt about her neighbor crystallized one evening in late September. Sarah had been working late, finishing up a complicated insurance claim, when she realized she was hungry and that she'd forgotten to plan dinner. She pulled a frozen pizza from the freezer and turned on the oven, then stepped outside for some fresh air while it heated. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Emma was at a sleepover at her new friend Madison's house, and for the first time since moving in, Sarah had the house to herself for an entire evening. It should have been peaceful. Instead, she felt watched. She glanced next door. Robert's house was dark except for a single light in what she'd learned was his home office. She couldn't see into the room, the blinds were drawn, but she knew he was home. His car was in the driveway, and she'd heard him come home about an hour ago. She was about to go back inside when a flash of light caught her eye. There, in the gap between Robert's window blinds, just for a second, the glint of glass, like a reflection off a lens. Was he taking pictures? Was he watching her with binoculars? The flash vanished before Sarah could be sure she had really seen it. Maybe it had just been a reflection from the setting sun. Maybe his computer screen. Maybe nothing at all. But her heart was pounding. She went inside, locked the door, and closed all the curtains. Then she felt ridiculous. She was jumping at shadows, seeing threats that weren't there. Robert was probably just working at his computer. The reflection was innocent. The timer beeped for the pizza. She pulled it from the oven and sat at her kitchen table, eating slice after slice without tasting any of it, her mind running through every interaction she'd had with Robert since moving in.
Had she been too friendly? Had she encouraged his attention by accepting his help? Should she have been more standoffish from the beginning? But even as she questioned herself, Sarah knew she was doing what society had conditioned women to do, blame herself for a man's unwanted attention, assume she'd somehow invited it rather than recognizing that the responsibility lay with him. She decided she needed to set some boundaries. Nothing dramatic. She didn't want to create hostility with someone who lived literally 10 feet from her bedroom wall. But she could be less available, less friendly. She could stop accepting his offers of help and stop engaging in long conversations at the fence. The next morning, Sarah put her plan into action. When she took Emma to the bus stop and Robert happened to be coming back from his jog, she gave a brief wave but didn't stop to chat like she usually did. "Morning," Robert called out cheerfully. "Morning," Sarah responded without breaking stride, heading back toward her house. She felt his eyes on her back the entire way. Over the next few days, Sarah implemented her boundary-setting strategy. She started checking the peephole before opening her door, even for deliveries, to make sure it wasn't Robert with some new offering or excuse to talk. She stopped checking her mail when she saw his car in the driveway. She kept Emma inside more, limiting backyard playtime. Robert noticed. Of course he noticed. Sarah could tell by the way his friendliness acquired an edge, like there was something sharp hidden inside the warmth. "Everything okay?" he asked one morning when Sarah was hurrying to our car. "You seem like you've been avoiding me." "What? No, I've just been really busy with work," Sarah lied. "If I've done something to offend you, I'd appreciate knowing what it was," Robert said, his voice still friendly but with an undertone that made Sarah's skin prickle. "I haven't done anything," Sarah assured him, hating that she felt the need to reassure him, to manage his feelings. "Really, I've just been swamped." "Well, if you need any help with anything, I'm still here," Robert said, and Sarah couldn't tell if it was a kind offer or a threat. The following week, Sarah started noticing new things that amplified her unease.
Items in her yard were being moved. Nothing major. The garden hose would be coiled differently than she'd left it. The lid on her trash can would be removed when she was certain she'd replaced it. Emma's bike would be propped against a different section of fence than where Emma had left it. Small changes, easy to dismiss as memory errors, but they kept happening. Then there was the night she woke up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom and glanced out Emma's bedroom window, the one facing the street, not Robert's house. There was a car parked at the curb that she'd never seen before, a dark sedan with tinted windows. As she watched, the driver's side window rolled down and a figure inside seemed to be looking at her house. Sarah stood frozen, watching. After a few minutes, the car started and drove slowly down the street. Probably nothing. Probably someone lost or waiting to pick someone up. But combined with everything else, it felt significant. The next morning, exhausted from too little sleep, Sarah made a mistake. She confided in Emma's friend, Madison's mother, Julie, during drop-off. "Do you know Robert Chen lives at 1249 Maple Street?" Sarah asked, trying to sound casual. Julie's expression shifted immediately. "The programmer guy? Keeps to himself mostly?" "Yeah, he's my next-door neighbor." Julie paused, choosing her words carefully. "I don't know him personally, but I heard some things. Nothing concrete, just neighborhood talk. Sarah's stomach tightened. What kind of things? Well, there was a woman who lived in your house before you. She moved out kind of suddenly, and some people said she'd complained about Chen being too friendly, too interested in her life. But then other people said she was just paranoid, that Chen hadn't done anything wrong. Julie shrugged. You know how neighborhood gossip is. Impossible to know what's true.
"Did she file any reports with the police?" Sarah asked. "Not that I know of. Like I said, it was all just talk." "Why? Is he bothering you?" Sarah almost said yes, almost admitted that she felt watched, trapped, like Robert was slowly tightening a web around her. But Julie was still essentially a stranger, and Sarah worried about seeming paranoid or dramatic. "No, just curious," Sarah said. "He's been really helpful since we moved in. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something I should know." But as Sarah drove home, Julie's words echoed in her mind. The previous owner had complained about Robert being too interested in her life, and she'd moved out suddenly. How many previous owners had there been? How many women had felt uncomfortable and left without explanation? That afternoon, Sarah did something she'd been avoiding, because it felt like such an invasion of privacy and an admission of fear. She Googled Robert Chen. What she found wasn't alarming exactly, but it was thin. Robert had a LinkedIn profile showing his claimed work in computer programming. He had a Facebook account that was almost entirely private. There were no criminal records in Illinois, no news stories, nothing that suggested he was dangerous. But there was also nothing that proved he was safe. His digital footprint was oddly sparse for someone in his age group. His LinkedIn showed a job at a company that, when Sarah looked it up, seemed to be legitimate but had no online presence beyond a basic website. His Facebook had no photos, no posts visible to non-friends, just a profile picture of a generic landscape. It felt curated, deliberately minimal, like someone who was trying to seem normal without actually being normal. Sarah slammed her laptop closed, her heart racing. She was being ridiculous. Plenty of people had minimal social media presence. It didn't mean they were dangerous. But that night, as she lay in bed, Sarah heard something that made her blood run cold. Footsteps in her backyard. Slow, deliberate footsteps walking across the grass, coming from the direction of Robert's yard. Sarah held her breath, listening. The footsteps stopped, then started again, moving closer to her house. She grabbed her phone, ready to call 911, when the footsteps retreated. She heard the gate creak, her gate, the one in the privacy fence, and then silence. In the morning, Sarah checked her backyard. There was no evidence of anyone having been there, but the gate she knew she'd latched, was standing open.
Sarah didn't sleep well after the footsteps incident. Every sound in the old house, the settling of wood, the hum of the refrigerator, the wind in the trees, set her nerves on edge. She kept telling herself she'd imagined it, or that it had been an animal, but she knew what she'd heard. Those had been human footsteps. Someone had been in her yard. The next morning, while Emma was at school, Sarah did something she'd been contemplating for days. She went to the Riverside Police Department. Officer Corinne Mendoza listened patiently as Sarah explained her concerns, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. She was in her mid-30s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that Sarah found comforting. So, to summarize, Officer Mendoza said when Sarah finished, "Your neighbor has been friendly and helpful, but you feel like he's watching you. He knows details about your life that seem like they require surveillance, and last night you heard someone in your backyard." When she put it that way, Sarah felt foolish. "I know it sounds paranoid." "It doesn't sound paranoid," Mendoza assured her. "Trust your gut. That's what I always tell people. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. The problem is, legally, there's not much we can do at this point. Being overly friendly isn't a crime. Knowing details about your life could be explained by natural observation. Neighbors do tend to know each other's business just by proximity." "What about the footsteps? Someone was in my yard." "Did you see anyone?" "No." "Any damage to property? Anything stolen?" "No, but the gate was open when I'd left it latched." Mendoza nodded sympathetically. "I understand how concerning this is, but without evidence of a crime or a direct threat, I can't investigate your neighbor. What I can do is increase patrols in your neighborhood and have officers drive by your house more frequently, especially at night. And I can document your concerns, so if anything else happens, we have a record. So I just have to wait until he does something bad enough to warrant police action?" Sarah heard the frustration in her own voice. "I wish I could tell you differently," Mendoza said gently. "What I suggest is you start documenting everything. Keep a journal of any interactions that make you uncomfortable. Note times and dates of anything suspicious. Take photos if you see him on your property. Install security cameras if you can afford them. You can get decent ones pretty cheap these days. Build a paper trail. If this escalates, having that documentation will be crucial." Sarah left the police station feeling only marginally better. She stopped at Home Depot on the way home and bought 2 security cameras, one for her front door and one for her back. They were more expensive than she had hoped, money she didn't really have to spare, but Officer Mendoza was right. She needed documentation.
Installing the cameras took most of the afternoon. The front one was easy, just mounting it above the door and connecting it to her Wi-Fi. The back one was trickier. She had to figure out the best angle to cover the whole yard while keeping it weather protected. She was standing on a ladder, drilling holes for the mounting bracket, when Robert appeared at the fence. "Installing cameras?" he asked, his tone neutral but his eyes calculating as they tracked her movements. "Everything okay?" Sarah nearly fell off the ladder. "Jesus, you startled me." "Sorry." He didn't sound sorry. "Just noticed the new equipment. Seems like overkill for this neighborhood. We don't have much crime here." "Better safe than sorry," Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She could feel sweat trickling down her back, despite the cool October air. "I suppose, though I'd think if you were worried about security, you'd mention it to your neighbors. We try to look out for each other here." There was something in his voice,
Was it hurt? Anger? Accusation? I'm just being cautious. Cautious about what? Robert pressed. Has something happened? No, Sarah lied. I've just always wanted security cameras. Seemed like a good time to install them. Robert stared at her for a long moment, and Sarah had to fight the urge to look away. Finally, he shrugged. Well, if you need help, let me know. I'm pretty handy with that kind of tech. I've got it handled, but thanks. After he left, Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she had to wait 10 minutes before she could continue working. The look on Robert's face when he'd seen the cameras, it had been fury, quickly masked but unmistakable. He was angry that she was taking precautions, angry that she was making his surveillance more difficult. Because that's what it was, Sarah realized, with a clarity that was both terrifying and liberating. Robert had been surveilling her. He knew her schedule, not from coincidence, but from watching her. He knew details about her life, not from casual observation, but from careful, deliberate stalking. She wasn't paranoid. She was being stalked by her neighbor. That night, Sarah sat down with Emma and had a serious conversation. Henny, I need to talk to you about Mr. Chen.
Emma looked up from her homework, her expression guarded. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetie, not at all. But I need you to understand something important. Mr. Chen is not our friend. He's just our neighbor. And I need you to keep your distance from him. Why? He's always nice to me. I know he seems nice, but Sarah struggled with how much to tell an 8-year-old. Sometimes adults aren't what they seem. I need you to promise me you won't talk to him unless I'm right there with you. Don't accept anything from him. Don't go near his house. And if he ever tries to talk to you when I'm not around, I want you to come get me immediately. Emma's eyes widened. Is he a stranger danger? Something like that. Can you promise me? I promise, Mom. Emma looked scared now, and Sarah hated that she'd had to take away her daughter's sense of safety in their new home. Over the next week, Sarah became hyper-vigilant. She checked the camera footage every night, studying every frame. Mostly, it showed the usual things: the mail carrier, squirrels, the occasional neighbor walking a dog. But on Wednesday night, at 2:47 a.m., the backyard camera caught something that made Sarah's blood run cold. A figure, dressed in dark clothing, standing at the edge of her yard near the fence line. Just standing there, facing her house. The person was too far from the camera, and the night vision was too grainy to make out features. But Sarah knew. She knew it was Robert. He stood there for 17 minutes, just watching her house. Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness. Sarah downloaded the footage and emailed it to Officer Mendoza, then sat at her kitchen table trying to decide what to do. It was 3 a.m. Emma was asleep, and Sarah had proof that someone was lurking in her yard in the middle of the night. But was it enough? Would the police even be able to identify Robert from such grainy footage? The next morning, Officer Mendoza called.
I got your email, I've reviewed the footage, and while it's concerning, I can't definitively identify the person. It could be your neighbor, but it could also be someone else. What I can tell you is that this constitutes trespassing if they crossed onto your property. Do you want to file a formal report?
Yes, Sarah said without hesitation. Okay, I'll need you to come in and make an official statement. And Ms. Mitchell, I think it's time you seriously consider a restraining order. Even if we can't prove it was Robert Chen in that video, combined with your other documentation, you have enough to petition for an order of protection. A restraining order. The words felt both validating and terrifying. Validating because it meant Officer Mendoza believed her concerns were legitimate. Terrifying because it meant escalation. Once she filed for a restraining order, there would be no going back to any semblance of neighborly peace. But peace was already gone, wasn't it? Peace had been an illusion Robert had carefully maintained while he studied her, learned her patterns, and waited for what? What was his endgame? Sarah called in sick to work and went to the courthouse. The process of filing for a restraining order was humiliating and exhausting. She had to recount every incident, every uncomfortable interaction, every time Robert had appeared where he shouldn't be or known something he shouldn't know. The clerk was professional, but Sarah could see the skepticism in their eyes. What had Robert actually done? What concrete harm had occurred? The judge will review your petition. There will be a hearing in 10 days. Mr. Chen will be notified and given a chance to respond. In the meantime, avoid all contact with him if possible. Avoid contact. When he lived 10 feet away from her bedroom window. Sarah went home and tried to work, but she couldn't concentrate. Emma would be home from school in 3 hours. Sarah needed to figure out their next move. Even if she got the restraining order, it was just a piece of paper. If Robert wanted to hurt them, a court order wouldn't stop him. She was deep in these dark thoughts when her phone buzzed with an alert from her security app. Someone was at her front door.
Sarah opened the app and felt her stomach drop. Robert was standing on her porch, holding a manila envelope. She watched through the camera as he knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. Then he bent down and slid the envelope under her door. Sarah waited until she saw him walk back to his own house before she approached the door. The envelope lay on her doormat like a poisonous snake. She picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. Inside were photos, dozens of photos of her. Sarah getting her mail, Sarah in her backyard, Sarah through her kitchen window, Sarah walking Emma to the bus stop. The photos were dated, going back to the day she'd moved in. Every single day for the past 6 weeks, Robert had photographed her, multiple times per day, sometimes 10 or 15 times. And beneath the photos was a note in neat handwriting. I know you went to the police. I know you're trying to get a restraining order. You're making a mistake. I'm not your enemy. I care about you and Emma. I want to protect you. But if you keep pushing me away, if you keep treating me like I'm some kind of criminal, I can't be responsible for what might happen. Think about Emma. Think about what's best for her.
We could be good together, Sarah. We could be a family. But you have to stop fighting it." Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she dropped the envelope. The photos scattered across her floor. Dozens of images of her, captured without her knowledge. Evidence of obsessive surveillance that had been going on since day one. She grabbed her phone and called Officer Mendoza, but it went to voicemail. She tried 911.
911. What's your emergency? My neighbor has been stalking me. He just left photos on my doorstep. Photos he took of me without my permission. I need help. Ma'am, is he currently threatening you? He left the note saying he can't be responsible for what happens if I keep pushing him away. That sounds like a threat to me. I understand you're frightened, but has he made any explicit threats? Has he said he's going to harm you? Not explicitly, but I'm going to send an officer to take a report, but what you're describing is harassment, not an immediate danger. In the meantime, I'd advise you to stay inside and keep your doors locked. The dispatcher took her information and promised an officer would arrive within the hour. Sarah hung up, feeling helpless and frustrated. An hour might as well be a year when Robert was 10 feet away, when he'd proven he could and would enter her property whenever he wanted. Sarah gathered all the photos and the note, careful not to handle them more than necessary. Evidence. She needed to preserve evidence. She put everything back in the envelope and placed it on her kitchen counter. Then she did something she'd been avoiding. She called her ex-husband, David. "Sarah?" David sounded surprised to hear from her. They only communicated about Emma, and even that was usually through text. "I need your help," Sarah said, hating the words as she spoke them. "There's a situation with my neighbor. He's been stalking me, and I'm worried about Emma's safety." She explained everything. The constant surveillance, the photos, the note. To her relief, David didn't question or dismiss her concerns. "Pack a bag for you and Emma. You're going to stay with me until this is resolved." "David, Don't argue, Sarah. I know we have our issues, but Emma's safety comes first. Grab what you need and get out of that house. I'll be there in an hour."
An hour? Could she wait an hour? Sarah looked out her kitchen window toward Robert's house. His car was in the driveway. He was home. He knew she'd found the photos. What was he thinking right now? What was he planning? Sarah ran upstairs and threw clothes into a suitcase. She grabbed Emma's favorite toys, her school books, toiletries. She was moving on autopilot, her mind racing. Should she leave a note for the police officer who was coming? Should she wait for them? She was halfway down the stairs with her suitcase when she heard it, the sound of her back door opening. Sarah froze. She'd locked that door. She was certain she'd locked it. "Sarah?" Robert's voice called from her kitchen, friendly and conversational, as if he had every right to be in her house. "I saw you packing through the window. Are you going somewhere?" Sarah's phone was upstairs on her nightstand. Her keys were in her purse, which was in the kitchen, with Robert. She was trapped on her own staircase with a stalker in her kitchen and no way to call for help. "I know you're there, Sarah," Robert continued. "Your car's in the driveway. Your purse is on the counter. There's no point hiding. I just want to talk. That's all I've ever wanted. Just to talk, to be close to you, to be part of your life. Is that so wrong?" Sarah forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly. She couldn't panic. She had
to think. "I've been patient," Robert said, and now there was an edge to his voice, the friendly mask slipping. "So patient. I helped you when you first moved in. I was kind to Emma. I did everything right. But you keep pushing me away, keep treating me like I'm some kind of monster. Do you know how that makes me feel?" Sarah heard his footsteps moving through her kitchen, into her living room, coming toward the stairs. "I'm not a monster, Sarah. I'm just a man who cares about you, who wants to protect you, who wants to be with you. Is that so terrible?"
Sarah made a decision. She dropped the suitcase and ran up the stairs as quietly as she could, heading for Emma's bedroom. There was a window there that faced the street, not Robert's house. She could scream for help. Someone might hear. She heard Robert's footsteps on the stairs behind her. "Sarah, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." She reached Emma's room and slammed the door, locking it. She ran to the window, fumbling with the lock. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip it. Behind her, Robert tried the doorknob. "Sarah, open the door. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk." The window lock finally gave way. Sarah pushed the window open and screamed as loud as she could. "Help! Someone help me!" The door shuddered as Robert slammed against it. The lock wouldn't hold long. It was just a simple bedroom lock, meant for privacy, not security. "Help!" Sarah screamed again. "Someone call 911!" Across the street, she saw a neighbor come out onto their porch, looking around for the source of the screaming. "Call 911!" Sarah shouted. 1247 Maple Street. There's a man in my house." The door lock broke. Robert pushed into the room. Sarah grabbed the lamp from Emma's nightstand and threw it at him. It missed, shattering against the wall. "Sarah, please," Robert said, advancing slowly, his hands raised in a gesture that might have been placating or might have been preparation to grab her. "Stay back." Sarah grabbed Emma's softball bat from the corner. "I'm warning you." In the distance, sirens. The neighbor had called. Help was coming. Robert heard them too. His expression changed, the friendly mask falling away entirely. What Sarah saw underneath was cold, calculating, and utterly without remorse. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You think the police can protect you? A restraining order can protect you? I know where you work, where Emma goes to school. I know your routines, your habits, your fears. I know everything about you, Sarah. You can't escape me." Then he turned and walked out of the room, down the stairs, out through the back door he'd used to enter. By the time the police arrived, Robert was back in his own house.
The police took Sarah's statement, photographed the broken door lock, collected the envelope of photos and the note. Officer Mendoza arrived and took charge of the scene, her expression grim as she reviewed the evidence. "This is enough for an arrest," she said. "Breaking and entering, stalking, harassment, we've got him." Two officers went next door to Robert's house. Sarah watched from her living room window as they knocked, announced themselves, and waited. After a few minutes, one officer tried the door. It was unlocked. They went inside. They were in there for 20 minutes. When they emerged, they were alone. Officer Mendoza came back to Sarah's house, her face troubled. "He's gone. The house is empty, and I mean empty. No furniture, no personal items, nothing. It looks like he cleared it out days ago, maybe weeks. We found cleaning supplies, bleach stains on the carpet. He's been planning this." Sarah felt her knees go weak. "So he's just gone?" "We've issued a BLO, be on the lookout. His car is gone too. But Miss Mitchell, I'm going to be honest with you. He had a head start, and he's clearly been preparing for this. We need to assume he's dangerous and that he may come back." David arrived 20 minutes later, and Sarah had never been so grateful to see her ex-husband. He took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug that she didn't resist. "Pack enough for a week. You're staying with me until they catch him." Sarah, Emma, and David left the house on Maple Street that evening, and Sarah had the terrible feeling she'd never return. Officer Mendoza promised to have patrols drive by regularly, and they'd installed additional locks on all the doors and windows. But Sarah knew locks wouldn't stop Robert if he really wanted to get in. The first 3 days were tense but uneventful. Sarah worked remotely from David's apartment. Emma stayed home from school, and they all tried to pretend this was a normal visit rather than hiding from a stalker. The police had tracked Robert's credit cards. He'd withdrawn the maximum cash advance from 3 cards the day after he'd broken into Sarah's house, giving him several $1,000s. After that, no activity. No phone pings, no credit card use, no sightings. He'd vanished. On the 4th day, Sarah's phone rang from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Sarah." Robert's voice was calm, almost serene. "I hope you're safe and comfortable." Sarah's hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She gestured frantically at David, who grabbed his own phone to call the police. "Robert, where are you?" "Does it matter? I could be anywhere. I could be outside David's apartment right now. I could be following Emma's school bus route, learning where she'll go when she eventually has to return to school. I could be planning my next visit to our home on Maple Street. It's not our home. It was never our home."
Wasn't it, though? Robert's voice took on a dreamy quality that was somehow more frightening than anger. "I thought we were building something there. I thought you'd eventually understand what we could be together. But you rejected me, Sarah. You humiliated me. You made me into a criminal when all I ever wanted was to love you. Robert, you need help. Please turn yourself in. Let doctors help you." "Help me?" He laughed, bitter and broken. "The only help I need is for you to understand, to finally see what you've done, what you've forced me to become." The line went dead. The police traced the call. It came from a burner phone, used once and then discarded, pinging off a cell tower in downtown Chicago. Robert could have been anywhere within a 5-mile radius. They found the phone in a trash can 2 hours later, wiped clean of prints. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Every sound in David's apartment made her jump. The building settling, neighbors walking overhead, the hum of the refrigerator. Around 2 a.m., she got up to check on Emma, who was sleeping on an air mattress in David's office. Emma's window faced the parking lot. As Sarah looked out, she saw a car that made her blood freeze. A dark sedan, different from Robert's vehicle, but with someone sitting in the driver's seat, just sitting there, watching the building. She called 911, but by the time police arrived, the car was gone. "We're escalating this. Officer Mendoza said the next morning. "I'm bringing in the FBI. This is cross state lines. He called from Illinois. You're in Illinois, but he could be anywhere. The Bureau has more resources for this kind of manhunt." The FBI agents who arrived that afternoon were Special Agents Rebecca Chen, no relation to Robert, she was quick to clarify, and Marcus Morrison. They were professional, thorough, and took Sarah's fears seriously in a way that made her want to cry with relief. Mr. Chen has escalated to the point where he's no longer trying to hide his surveillance. He wants you to know he's watching. That's a significant shift in behavior. He's becoming bolder, more reckless. "Is that good or bad?" Sarah asked. "Both," Agent Morrison replied. "Bad because it means he's more likely to act on his obsession. Good because reckless people make mistakes. They leave evidence. They get caught." The FBI went through Robert's abandoned house with forensic teams. What they found painted a disturbing picture. The basement had been converted into what could only be described as a surveillance center. Multiple monitors, recording equipment, hard drives full of footage. Robert had been recording Sarah not just since she moved in, but he'd installed cameras around the neighborhood that captured her during her house hunting visits months earlier.
"He chose you specifically," Agent Chan said, showing Sarah footage of herself viewing the house for the first time, months before she'd bought it. "He watched you fall in love with the house. He watched you bring Emma to see it. He planned this entire thing." They also found evidence of Robert's previous victims, or at least one previous victim they could identify. A woman named Angela Morrison, no relation to Agent Morrison, had lived in Sarah's house 3 years earlier. She'd moved out suddenly after 2 months, and Robert had documented her extensively. Photos, videos, pages of handwritten notes about her schedule, her habits, her routines. "We're trying to locate Miss Morrison," Agent Morrison said. "She may have information that could help us." But Angela Morrison couldn't be found. Not at her last known address, not through credit cards or phone records, not through family or friends. It was as if she disappeared after leaving Maple Street. Or, as Sarah couldn't stop thinking, as if she'd never left at all. On day 7 of Sarah's stay at David's apartment, things took a dark turn. Sarah returned home from a grocery run to find David standing in the hallway, holding a cardboard box. "This was outside the door," he said, his face pale. "It's addressed to you." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a doll, a child's doll, with blonde hair like Emma's, wearing a dress similar to one Emma owned, and tied around the doll's neck was a red ribbon, pulled tight like a noose. Beneath the doll was a note. "She's so beautiful, Sarah, just like you. It would be such a shame if something happened to her. You can prevent that. Come home. Come back to where you belong. We can be a family. We can be happy. But you have to choose. Choose me, or I choose for you." Agent Chen's response was immediate and decisive. "We're moving you to a safe house. Mr. Chen has made a credible threat against your daughter. We're not taking any chances." The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a building in Evanston, 20 miles from David's place. FBI agents were posted outside 24/7. Emma couldn't go to school. Sarah couldn't go anywhere without an escort. They were prisoners of Robert's obsession. Days passed, then a week. The FBI tracked down more of Robert's background. He'd been fired from 3 previous jobs for inappropriate behavior toward female coworkers. He'd been the subject of 2 restraining orders that had since expired. He'd been arrested once for trespassing, but the charges had been dropped. He was a pattern, a series of red flags that no one had connected until now. Why didn't anyone stop him before?
Sarah asked Agent Chen during one of their daily check-ins. Because he was smart enough to stay just on the legal side of the line. He never quite did enough to warrant serious intervention. He'd get fired, get a restraining order, then move to a new city and start over. He's been doing this for years, probably decades. You're just the first victim who fought back hard enough to bring law enforcement into it properly.
On day 14, Robert made contact again. This time via email, sent from a library computer in Gary, Indiana. The email contained photos, recent photos, of Emma at the safe house window, of Sarah getting into an FBI vehicle, of David leaving his office building. "I can see you anytime I want," the email read. "Your FBI agents, your safe house, your protection, it's all an illusion. I'm always there, Sarah, always watching, always waiting. And when the FBI gets tired of babysitting you, when you eventually have to return to normal life, I'll be there, unless you stop running and accept what we are to each other." By the time agents got to the library, Robert was long gone. The librarian remembered a man matching his description, but he'd worn a baseball cap and sunglasses. The security footage showed him, but not clearly enough for facial recognition. Agent Morrison sat down with Sarah that evening, his expression grave. "Miss Mitchell, I need to be straight with you. Robert Chen is obsessed to the point of delusion. He's not going to stop. He's not going to get tired or bored or move on. People like him, they fixate, and that fixation becomes their entire world. We've seen cases like this before. Sometimes they end with the stalker making a mistake and getting caught. Sometimes they end with the stalker hurting themselves. And sometimes—" He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. "What do I do?" Sarah asked. "Live in hiding forever? Watch Emma grow up in safe houses? Never go home again?" "We're going to catch him," Agent Chen said firmly. "But we need him to make a mistake. And I have an idea about how we might encourage that." The plan was risky. Sarah would return to the house on Maple Street, but the house would be under complete FBI surveillance. Cameras in every room. Agents in the house next door. They'd evacuated Robert's house, and the FBI had taken it over. Snipers on surrounding roofs. Sarah would be bait, but protected bait. "He wants you back at that house," Agent Morrison explained. "He's fixated on it as the place where your relationship exists. If you return, he'll see it as a sign that you're accepting him. He'll come to you, and when he does, we'll be ready." David was vehemently against it. "You're asking her to use herself as bait for a psychopath. Are you insane? I'm asking her to help us end this, because, Mr. Mitchell, this doesn't end any other way. He's not going to stop. The only question is whether we catch him on our terms or on his." Sarah made the decision that night, lying awake in the safe house, thinking about Emma's frightened face, about the life they were living,
about the future that seemed to stretch ahead in an endless series of safe houses and fear.
"I'll do it," she told the agents the next morning. "But Emma stays somewhere safe. She doesn't come near that house." "Agreed. She'll stay with your ex-husband at a secure FBI facility. Armed guards, no windows, total lockdown." They spent 3 days preparing. Sarah learned how to wear a wire, how to signal if she was in distress, how to stay calm and keep Robert talking if he did appear. They went over scenarios, plans, contingencies. On day 18 since Robert had disappeared, Sarah Mitchell returned to 1247 Maple Street. The house looked the same, but felt different, violated. She walked through rooms that had been dusted for prints, searched for evidence, transformed into a trap. Her bedroom, where Robert had noted the faulty window. Emma's room, where he'd cornered Sarah. The kitchen, where he'd entered uninvited. FBI agents were everywhere, hidden but present. In the attic, in the basement, in Robert's house next door, in vehicles on the street. She was surrounded by protection, but it didn't make her feel safe. That first night, nothing happened. Sarah lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that cameras were recording her, but that somewhere, agents were watching those feeds, keeping her safe. The second night, she heard sounds. Footsteps outside, a test of the door locks. Nothing definitive, nothing clear enough to be Robert, but something was circling the house, testing the defenses. On the third night, Sarah awoke to find her back door open. She reached for the panic button the FBI had given her, but before she could press it, she heard a voice. "Don't, Sarah. Please don't call them yet. Just give me 5 minutes, that's all I ask. 5 minutes to talk." Robert stood in her kitchen doorway, thinner than before, his face gaunt with exhaustion and something that might have been madness. He held no weapon that Sarah could see, but his very presence was threatening. Sarah's hand hovered over the panic button. The FBI had told her that the moment Robert appeared, she should signal. But they'd also told her to keep him talking if possible, to get him to confess, to build a case. 5 minutes, Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Then I'm pressing this button, and you're going to prison." "Fair enough." Robert moved into the kitchen, but didn't come closer. He looked around like a man seeing something precious that he'd lost. "I've missed this house, missed being near you. How did you get past the FBI?" "I've been watching them for days, learning their patterns, their shift changes. I know this neighborhood better than anyone. There are ways in that they don't know about. Storm drains, backyards, routes through places people don't think to watch." He smiled, and it was the saddest thing Sarah had ever seen. "I told you, I know everything."
What do you want, Robert? I want you to understand. He sat down at her kitchen table, uninvited, like he belonged there. I want you to see that everything I've done because I love you. Real love, Sarah. Not the fairy tale version. The kind that consumes you. The kind that makes you willing to give up everything. That's not love. That's obsession. What's the difference? Robert asked seriously. Both make you think about someone constantly. Both make you want to be near them. Both make you willing to sacrifice for them.
You say obsession like it's a bad thing. But I think maybe obsession is just love without the prettiness, without the lies we tell ourselves about it being noble and pure. Sarah's hand was still on the panic button, but she found herself genuinely curious, despite her fear. Robert, what happened to Angela Morrison? His expression flickered. Surprise, then something darker. How do you know about Angela? The FBI found your files. Photos, notes, surveillance. What happened to her? Robert was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, detached. Angela didn't understand either. She fought it, like you, but she fought harder. She tried to destroy me. Restraining order, police reports. She went to my employer. She tried to take everything from me. Where is she, Robert? Gone. His eyes met Sarah's, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. It's gone, and she's never coming back. That's what happens when you push too hard, Sarah, when you back someone into a corner with nothing left to lose. Did you kill her? I'm not going to answer that, but I will tell you this. I learned from Angela. I learned that I pushed too hard, too fast. With you, I tried to be better. I tried to be patient, to let it develop naturally. But you rejected me anyway. Why, Sarah? Why couldn't you just accept what we could have been? Because you never asked what I wanted. You decided who we should be to each other and tried to force me into that role. That's not a relationship, Robert. That's captivity. Robert stood abruptly, and Sarah's finger tensed on the panic button. But he didn't move toward her. Instead, he walked to the back door. Your 5 minutes are up, he said quietly. Call your FBI agents. Let them come. I'm tired, Sarah. I'm so tired of running, of planning, of loving someone who'll never love me back. Then turn yourself in. Get help. There's no help for what I am. Robert looked at her one last time, and in his eyes, Sarah saw not the monster she'd built him into, but something more pathetic and more frightening, a broken person who twisted love into something unrecognizable. Goodbye, Sarah. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed. I'm sorry you couldn't be what I needed. I'm sorry for all of it. He stepped out the back door, and Sarah pressed the panic button.
But even as FBI agents swarmed from their hiding places, even as she heard shouting and running footsteps, Sarah knew something was wrong. Robert had given up too easily. This wasn't the end game. This was another move in a game that wasn't over yet. The FBI agents burst through the doors within seconds of Sarah pressing the panic button, but Robert had vanished into the night. They found his exit route, through the backyard, over the fence, into a drainage system that connected to storm sewers running under the neighborhood. He'd planned his escape as carefully as he'd planned everything else. He's gone, Agent Morrison said, frustration evident in his voice. We had eyes everywhere, and he still slipped through. But Robert had made a crucial mistake. In his haste to escape, he'd left something behind, a burner phone, dropped in the backyard. The FBI's tech team cracked it within hours. What they found was deeply disturbing. Photos, hundreds of them, not just of Sarah, but of the house on Maple Street itself. Photos taken from inside Sarah's home, her bedroom, Emma's room, the bathroom. The timestamps went back months,
proving Robert had been entering her house long before the confrontation. And then there were the photos of Sarah's house engulfed in flames. Except Sarah's house wasn't on fire. The photos had been digitally manipulated, showing what Robert was planning to do. "He's escalating toward violence," Agent Chen said, showing Sarah the images. "He's moved from surveillance to fantasy, and now he's acting on those fantasies. We need to find him before he makes good on this threat." 3 days after Robert's escape, Sarah's house on Maple Street burned to the ground. It happened at 3 a.m. The fire department was called by neighbors who saw flames erupting from multiple points in the structure simultaneously. By the time firefighters arrived, the house was fully engulfed. Everything Sarah owned, every memory, every possession, gone. The arson investigation was swift and conclusive. Accelerants had been poured throughout the house. The fire had been set deliberately, professionally, and security cameras from a house across the street had captured a figure approaching Sarah's house at 2:47 a.m. carrying what looked like gas cans. The figure was too far away and too obscured by darkness to identify clearly, but Sarah knew. Everyone knew. Robert had burned down her house. "He's completely decompensated," Agent Morrison said, showing Sarah photos from the arson investigation. "This is a psychotic break. He's acting out what he wants to do to you. Ms. Mitchell, this man is extremely dangerous now. Whatever restraint he had before is gone."
The FBI's investigation intensified. They discovered that Robert had also set fire to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. Inside, investigators found a makeshift shrine, photos of Sarah on the walls, mannequins dressed in clothing similar to what Sarah wore. One mannequin with blonde hair like hers, positioned in what looked disturbingly like a marriage scene with a male mannequin. Another mannequin, smaller, child-sized, with blonde hair like Emma's. All of the mannequins had been partially burned, as if Robert was practicing, testing, preparing. "He's rehearsing," Agent Chen said quietly. "He's working up to something." 2 weeks after the house fire, Sarah received one final email. It came from an anonymous account routed through multiple proxy servers, nearly impossible to trace, but the message was clear. "Come alone, or I start with Emma's school. I know where she goes. I know what time she gets out. I know which door her classroom is closest to. Come alone, Sarah. This ends tomorrow, one way or another." Below the message was an address in rural Wisconsin and a time, 3 p.m. tomorrow. "It's a trap," Detective Park said unnecessarily. "He wants to lure you to an isolated location. Absolutely not." "But he knows where Emma goes to school," Sarah said. "Even with surveillance, even with warnings to the school, if he's willing to die, he could hurt her before anyone could stop him. You know it, I know it. He's not making idle threats anymore." After hours of debate, they developed a plan. Sarah would go to the Wisconsin address, but she wouldn't be alone. She'd be surrounded by FBI agents, snipers, a full tactical team. They would use Robert's trap against him. The address in Wisconsin was an abandoned farmhouse surrounded by fields and woods.
The kind of isolated place where screams wouldn't be heard, where someone could commit murder without interruption. As Sarah's car approached down the long gravel driveway, she could see the dilapidated structure, peeling white paint, sagging porch, broken windows, like dead eyes staring out at nothing. Sarah arrived at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. Her heart pounded hard. She could feel it in her throat. She was wearing a wire, had a GPS tracker sewn into her jacket, and a panic button in her pocket. But knowing the FBI was positioned in the woods around the property didn't make her feel safe. She was still driving toward a building where a man who'd already killed once was waiting for her. She parked the FBI-provided vehicle and sat for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. Through her earpiece, she heard Agent Chen's voice. "We have you visual. You're doing great, Sarah. Remember, keep him talking, get him to confess, and, at the first sign of immediate danger, hit the panic button. We'll be there in seconds." Sarah got out of the car. The October wind cut through her jacket, carrying the smell of decay and abandoned places. She walked slowly toward the farmhouse, each step feeling like it might be her last. At exactly 3 p.m., she saw movement in the doorway. A figure appeared, silhouetted against the darkness inside.
The man before her bore little resemblance to the helpful programmer from Maple Street. He was gaunt, his face sunken with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes hung loose on his frame. He'd lost at least 20 pounds. His hair was long and unkempt. "I knew you'd come. Come inside. We need to talk." "I'm not coming inside, Robert. We can talk here." Sarah stopped about 20 feet from the porch, maintaining distance. Robert's hand moved to his pocket. Sarah tensed, ready to run, but he pulled out a phone, not a weapon. "I have someone watching Emma's school right now. One call, and she gets a visitor. A very unfortunate visitor. So please, Sarah, come inside. Let's have privacy for our conversation." Sarah's mouth dried. Was he bluffing? The FBI had the school locked down, agents stationed there. But what if he'd found a way? What if someone was already inside waiting for his call? "You're lying," Sarah said, but her voice wavered. "Am I? Do you want to risk it? Do you want Emma's last moments to be filled with terror, wondering where her mommy is?" Robert's smile was awful, broken and desperate and utterly without sanity. "Come inside, Sarah. Just talk to me. That's all I want. Just talk." Through her earpiece, Agent Morrison's voice. "Your call, Sarah. We can extract you right now if you want." But if Robert did have someone at the school, if there was even a chance, Sarah walked toward the farmhouse. The interior smelled of mold, rotting wood, and something else, gasoline. Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dimness, and she saw what Robert had created. One wall was covered in photographs of her, hundreds of them, creating a massive collage that seemed to pulse and breathe in the dim light. Photos from before she'd even moved to Maple Street. Photos from the house, photos from David's apartment, photos from the safe house. He documented her entire life. In the center of the room, Robert had set up folding chairs and a small table, like a twisted parody of a coffee date. On the table sat 2 cups and a thermos. "I made coffee," Robert said, closing the door behind her. "I remember you like it with cream, no sugar. I pay attention, Sarah. I always pay attention."
Robert, you need help. Sarah stayed near the door, not moving toward the chairs. What you're feeling, it's not healthy. It's not love. You need professional help. Don't, Robert's voice turned sharp, don't patronize me. Don't tell me what I feel isn't real. I know what love is. This is it. Total, complete, all-consuming love. The kind most people are too weak to experience. The kind that makes you stalk women, burn down houses, and kill Angela Morrison? Robert flinched at the name. Angela was a mistake. I learned from her. She fought too hard, pushed too far. She tried to destroy me, so I had to protect myself. Where is she, Robert? Where did you bury her body?
In a place she'll never be found. His eyes refocused on Sarah, and the coldness in them made her step back. But I don't want to talk about Angela. I want to talk about us, about what we could have been. There is no us, Robert. There never was. You created a fantasy in your mind and tried to force me into it. I gave you everything. Robert's shout echoed in the empty farmhouse. I was kind, helpful, patient. I did everything right, and you threw it back in my face. You went to the police, got a restraining order, treated me like I was some kind of monster. Because you were stalking me, because you broke into my house, because you terrorized me and my daughter. I was protecting you. Robert was pacing now, agitated, his hands clenching and unclenching. I was watching over you, keeping you safe. Do you know how dangerous the world is? I was your guardian angel, and you rejected me. Through her earpiece, Sarah, his agitation is escalating. Be ready to move. Robert, please listen to me. She tried to keep her voice calm, soothing. You're sick. What you're feeling, what you've done, it's not your fault. It's an illness, but you can get treatment. You can… There's nothing wrong with me. Robert grabbed one of the folding chairs and threw it against the wall. It clattered loudly in the enclosed space. Why does everyone keep saying that? There's nothing wrong with loving someone. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be close to them, to protect them, to make them yours. But I'm not yours, Robert. I'm my own person. I have my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own choices, and I choose not to be with you. That's my right. Robert went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. Then you've chosen death. He reached behind his back and pulled out a gun. Sarah's hand flew to her pocket, to the panic button, but Robert raised the weapon. Don't press it, Sarah. I'll shoot. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right now. Sarah froze, her hand in her pocket, finger on the button, but not pressing it. That's good. That's very good. Now take your hand out slowly. No sudden movements. Sarah complied, her hand shaking as she withdrew it from her pocket. Empty. Here's what's going to happen, Robert said, and he sounded eerily calm now, like he'd made peace with something. We're going to sit down, and you're going to drink the coffee I made. And then we're going to talk, really talk, about what we mean to each other. And maybe, just maybe, you'll finally understand. You'll finally see what I see. And if I don't, then we'll die together. He gestured at the room with the gun, and Sarah noticed for the first time the jerry cans in the corners. Gasoline. Lots of it. If I can't have you, no one can. And if you can't love me, then at least we'll be together in death. Isn't that romantic? Like Romeo and Juliet? That's not romantic, Robert. That's murder-suicide. Call it what you want. Sit down. Sarah sat in the remaining chair, her mind racing. The FBI was outside, but they couldn't storm in without risking Robert pulling the trigger. She had to keep him talking, had to wait for an opening. Robert sat across from her, the gun resting on his lap, pointed at her. He poured coffee from the thermos into both cups with his free hand.
"Drink," he commanded. Sarah stared at the cup. "What's in it?" "Coffee, and something to make you relax, to make this easier." "You drugged it." "I said drinks." Robert raised the gun slightly. Through her earpiece, barely audible, "Snipers have visual through the east window. Say the word and we take the shot." But if they missed, if Robert's finger tightened on the trigger in reflex as he fell. Sarah picked up the cup, but didn't drink. "Can I ask you something first?" Robert nodded, watching her carefully. "When did it start? When did you first decide you loved me?" His expression softened. "I saw you looking at the house. It was March, a Tuesday afternoon. You pulled up with Emma, and the two of you walked around the yard. You were smiling, pointing things out to her, and I watched from my window. You looked so hopeful, so full of possibility, and I thought, this is the one. This is the woman I've been waiting for. But you didn't know me. I knew enough. I knew you were alone, struggling, trying to build a better life for your daughter. I knew you needed someone to take care of you. I knew we were meant to be together. Robert, that's not love. That's projection. You saw what you wanted to see, not who I actually am. I know who you are." His voice rose again. "I know everything about you. Your favorite color is blue. You drink coffee every morning at 7 a.m. You bite your lip when you're concentrating. You sing off-key in the shower. You check on Emma 3 times every night after she's asleep. I know you. You know facts about me, but you don't know me. You don't know my dreams, my fears, what makes me laugh or cry. You never asked. You just watched and cataloged and created a fantasy version of me in your head. Then tell me." Robert leaned forward desperately. "Tell me those things. Let me know you. That's all I've ever wanted, to really know you, to be close to you." "It's too late for that, Robert. It was too late the moment you started stalking me instead of just talking to me like a normal person."
Normal. Robert spat the word. Everyone wants normal, but normal people don't feel things the way I do. Normal people have shallow, forgettable relationships. What I feel for you is epic. It's once in a lifetime. It's the kind of love that people write songs about, that starts wars, that gets people killed, Sarah interrupted. That's what your kind of love does, Robert. It destroys. It hurts. It kills. Robert's face crumpled, tears suddenly streaming down his face. Then what am I supposed to do? If my love is wrong, if everything I feel is sick and twisted, then what's the point? What's the point of any of this? Get help. Turn yourself in. Work with doctors to understand why you feel this way and how to change it. I can't change it, Robert's voice broke. Don't you understand? This is who I am. This is all I am. Without my love for you, I'm nothing. I'm empty. He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. He looked down at his chest, where a small red dot had appeared. The laser sight from a sniper's rifle. "No," Robert whispered. He looked at Sarah, and in her eyes she saw sudden clarity, sudden understanding that it was over. "No, no, no!" He raised the gun, but not toward Sarah. He pressed it under his own chin. "Robert, don't!" Sarah screamed, lunging forward. But before she could reach him, before Robert could pull the trigger, the farmhouse windows exploded inward. FBI agents in tactical gear crashed through from every direction, shouts of "Drop the weapon! FBI!" filling the air. Robert swung the gun toward the agents. 3 shots rang out simultaneously from 3 different sniper positions. Robert jerked backward, the gun flying from his hand. He fell to the floor, blood blooming across his chest and shoulder. Not dead, the snipers had aimed to disable, not kill. Agents swarmed him, kicking the gun away, securing his hands as he gasped and writhed. Sarah was pulled back by Agent Chen, moved quickly toward the door and out into the clean Wisconsin air. Behind her, she could hear Robert screaming, not in pain, but in anguish. "Sarah, Sarah, please, I love you. I'll always love you. You'll never be free of me. Never. Sarah, Sarah!" His voice followed her to the FBI vehicle, growing fainter, but never quite disappearing, even after the door closed and they drove away. Even now, months later, Sarah sometimes heard it in her nightmares. The voice of a man who'd confused obsession with love and had almost destroyed them both in service to that delusion.
6 months later, Sarah stood in the doorway of her new apartment watching Emma play in the small yard of the complex. It wasn't a house, it wasn't Maple Street, but it was theirs, and more importantly, it was safe. Robert Chen was in federal prison awaiting trial on multiple charges: stalking, breaking and entering, arson, assault with a deadly weapon, threatening a federal officer. His attorney was trying for an insanity defense, but the FBI had built such a comprehensive case that it seemed unlikely to work. Either way, Robert would be locked away for a very long time. The FBI had also connected him to Angela Morrison's disappearance. They'd searched properties he'd owned or rented over the years and found evidence: traces of blood, personal items belonging to Angela. Her body had never been found, but prosecutors were confident they could prove he'd killed her. Robert wasn't talking, but his computer hard drives told the story. Photos of Angela, surveillance footage he'd recorded, obsessive notes about her schedule and movements, and then, suddenly, nothing. She'd simply vanished from his recordings, and Robert had methodically cleaned the house next door, scrubbed it with bleach, replaced the carpet in her bedroom. Sarah had nightmares about Angela Morrison, about what she'd suffered, about what Robert had done to her when she'd refused his love. Sarah had been lucky. She'd sensed the danger early enough, had acted quickly enough, had survived. Angela hadn't been so lucky. The insurance payout from the house fire had been enough for a down payment on this apartment and to replace most of what they'd lost. David had been surprisingly supportive, even suggesting that they try co-parenting more cooperatively. Emma was seeing a therapist to process the trauma, but she seemed to be bouncing back with the resilience of childhood. Sarah was in therapy too, working through the violation of having someone invade her life so completely, of having every private moment turned into surveillance footage, of having her home, what should have been her safe place, turned into a trap. "Mom, come push me on the swing," Emma called, and Sarah walked into the yard, grateful for the normalcy of the request,
for the simple joy of her daughter's laughter. As she pushed Emma higher and higher, Sarah found herself scanning the apartments around them, looking for anyone watching, anyone taking too much interest. Her therapist said that hypervigilance was normal after what she'd been through, that it would fade with time. But Sarah wasn't sure she wanted it to fade entirely. She'd learned an important lesson, that danger doesn't always announce itself with obvious threats. Sometimes it comes dressed in kindness, offering to help with groceries, showing up at convenient times, slowly insinuating itself into your life until you can't escape. She'd learned to trust her instincts, to not dismiss discomfort as paranoia, to not manage a man's feelings at the expense of her own safety. She'd learned that sometimes the monsters don't live in haunted houses or abandoned buildings. Sometimes they live next door, wave to you every morning, and call their obsession love. "Higher, Mom!" Emma squealed with delight.
Sarah pushed her daughter higher, watching her soar against the blue sky, and thought about the future. A future where Emma would grow up knowing her mother was strong enough to protect her, where Sarah herself would learn to live without fear again, where the memory of Robert Chen would fade from sharp-edged trauma into something more distant, more manageable. But she also thought about the women who would come after, about the future victims who might not recognize the signs as quickly as she had, might not survive their encounters with men who confused ownership with love. That's why she'd agreed to work with the FBI on their training materials about stalking, why she'd agreed to speak at a domestic violence awareness event next month, why she'd shared her story with journalists, hoping that somewhere another woman would read it and recognize the danger before it was too late. Robert Chen had tried to destroy her, had tried to make her a victim, a casualty, maybe even a corpse in an unmarked grave. But Sarah Mitchell had survived, and now she would make sure that survival meant something. As Emma pumped her legs, going higher on her own now, Sarah smiled. They were going to be okay. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. They were going to be okay.
And so our story ends, not with the tidy resolution of fiction, but with the messy, complicated reality of survival. Sarah and Emma are safe now, but forever changed by their encounter with a man who believed his obsession was love. If you recognize yourself in Sarah's story, if you have a neighbor, co-worker, acquaintance, or even romantic partner whose attention feels excessive, whose helpfulness feels invasive, who seems to know too much about your life and schedule, trust your instincts. Document everything. Tell friends and family. Contact the police. Don't dismiss your concerns as paranoia. Your gut feeling exists for a reason. It's your subconscious recognizing patterns and dangers that your conscious mind might want to rationalize away. Listen to it. And if you're someone who recognizes yourself in Robert's obsessive thoughts, if you find yourself fixating on someone who's made it clear they're not interested, if you're monitoring their social media constantly, driving by their house, learning their schedule, please seek help. These thoughts and behaviors are not love. They're signs that you need professional intervention before you hurt someone or destroy your own life. As you drift off to sleep tonight, may you find comfort in locked doors, in the distance between yourself and those who might wish you harm, in the strength it takes to recognize danger, and the courage it takes to escape it. Good night, and may your rest be peaceful and your home be truly your sanctuary.